So we're here with Reverend Matthew Cummings. He's a pastor here in Washington State. Reverend, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Reverend, so tell us a little bit about some of the concerns that you're going to be talking about later today at the Red Pill Expo.
Sure. Just basically, I'm going to be discussing what I see as what's been the foundation of the manifestation of the Communist Manifesto, that people all over this beautiful state of Washington, a lot in the rural areas, because that's where I'm living now, are dependent on federal subsidies, on welfare, on it just really concerns me when I go to Walmart and the first day of the week through the fourth day of the week that there are just lines of people who've received their federal checks going to cash them. So to me, that is producing, even though in Stevens County it's supposed to be a conservative county, that's producing a whole group of people that will vote what I consider more left of center, because their dependency is on the federal government itself. And so, number one, to encourage people, now that Trump's been elected, now's not the time to fall asleep, but to become more vigilant in truth, in not just taking the red pill, but actually being activated to do something about it. Number two, being able to, what I say, find different ways and alternatives to encourage people to come off of basically depending on the federal government. You know, number three, finding ways in seeing to it that in general, that what I call the self-reliance initiative, which is getting conservatives who have different trade skills coming into Stevens County within the next 5 years and helping to train those who want to come off of welfare itself. To me, it's all about the welfare mindset that people have been set in place a generation or two. Just as in urban cities, there may be 6 generations that are in, that are literally have been caught up in welfare. In the rural area, it's about 3 generations where literally, you know, you'll see a grandma who's maybe 40, her daughter who's maybe 20, who's now not working and also on federal assistance, and that child's going to grow up in it also. It's just not the American way, the way things have been, and also the whole welfare mindset is indeed a danger to our constitutional republic. And so that's my interest.
Excellent. Wonderful. So I know yesterday we talked a little bit about what pastors can do. So if you would tell us, what can pastors of churches do to raise awareness about these things, and what can average citizens do, and what should they be doing?
Well, in regard for pastors, of course I have a heart for them because I'm a pastor myself. But the reality is that most pastors have taken the political correct method in preaching. They need to start preaching truth and preaching about being responsible for oneself, and not allowing for victimization to be pushed away as though, well, we'll give them a break. The other part of that is the average citizen. If we think out of the box, we can find ways to get our neighbors, what I consider, off of welfare. You know, most people need that encouraging word. Number one, you can do something else than just receive a check. And at first when you say that sounds kind of hard. Come on. But, as I've been saying, offending people is not a problem. Actually, truth requires the offense itself. In that way, once a person is offended to, listen, I know that you've been doing this for 6 or 7 years, but I know you don't feel good about yourself. I and others are going to help you begin the process of coming off of welfare, because it's immoral that you as an able working person is having to depend on the federal government to, to supply your needs.
What do you think has caused this growing dependence on the federal government? I mean, it just seems like, at least until Trump, the welfare rolls were growing, the food stamp rolls were growing. Is this a problem with the mindset of the American people? Is it the government? Is it some of both?
I hate to admit it's some of both. Things were already building towards that before Barack Obama came on the scene, but his coming on the scene literally represented one of the biggest elements of big government that we've had. And unfortunately, for many blacks, you heard even in his election, good, that means that all of us will get a car. And all of us, will get a phone, which of course they've been trying to push, and health care, and and free education, and instead of what should have happened is that, well, okay, Barack's come, so therefore that means I can go out and get a job. That means I can go out and be productive in my life. So number one is the government. Number two, and what's even more scary, is the dumbing down of our education system has allowed for people with good minds who've been blinded that it's the government that's God itself. And so, these are just some of the problems.
Awesome. Switching gears just a little bit, I know you have an incredibly interesting story from your childhood. I guess you went into a very interesting school. Would you tell us a little bit about that, and maybe the guy who was the brain behind all of this?
Sure. As I've said, in 1969, I was recruited for a communist school called Children's Community School. The head of that school, the principal, was Bill Ayers. Yes, the Bill Ayers, the head of SDS, and also the underlink head of the Weatherman Underground. And his original lover, which is Diane Alton, who was the woman who was used to recruit me for that communist Marxist school, was Diane Alton. And she was not only my teacher, I mean, she babysitted for me. That's how close she and my mother was. And my mom did not know all of what was going on in her mind. I now realize she was looking to recruit me and to train me. I was to be trained as a Barack Obama. That's really what was going. And so Diane recruited, and we accepted because my mom wanted to get me. I mean, my mom's all about education, so she accepted that, and I went ahead and went into that class. But things changed, as I've shared before, that first day when Diane Alton said, "You no longer have to listen to your parents." And just that whole thing, as I've shared with people, to me, when I think back now, that was the original idea about removing parental rights from kids. If you can get the children, that's all that's needed. And so, I look at that now and I realize more and more and more, yes, my mom heard that and got stirred up, praise the Lord, and was able to get me out of that school. But the reality is that everything that was said those 6 months, the agenda has manifested in our great nation. And Barack Obama's coming to power was the catalyst for me to begin to realize that I can speak into this situation because I have a unique view as not just a citizen of this constitutional republic, but even more as a black man. And during the time that I was coming up in 2008 to begin to speak, one of the things that I noticed was that anyone white spoke against Obama was called racist. Now, I went ahead on and spoke against him. And a funny story, and we didn't say anything about this yesterday, but a funny story happened. In 2009, I was in an argument with a person who was a progressive, and we were talking, and he happened to be of European descent. We're going back and forth and discussing and disagreeing. And I said something that really got his goat, and he said, "You racist!" And it dawned on me he had been used to arguing with conservatives who were white. And so I sat there and gave him a few minutes to think about what he just said. And he kind of caught himself and looked up and said, "Oh." And I said, "Look, this argument isn't about race. Obama's ideology is wrong. It's contrary to everything that we believe as Americans. And I'm not just saying that. I was on the cusp of speaking against him even before he got elected. So I was not a Johnny-come-lately, you know. So everything that we're right now experiencing is because of what I heard back in 1969. And so I'm passionate about conservatives getting some fire in their belly and not being afraid to speak up, and not being afraid of the cost that it's going to bring for standing for truth. That's why I'm so happy to be here at the Red Pill Expo, because raw truth is what is really needed right now. There's more that I'll share on stage, but I will say this. My concentration was to the church. I believe that the church failed its mission during Barack Obama's time. And when I say church, not just black, white, all of it. It was deadly silent, afraid of losing its 501c3, afraid of being called bigots and racists. Well, look, I'm black. My family calls me the white sheep of the family. Come on now. I can't be a black sheep. So I'm called a racist no matter what. So that's why hearing what the Southern Poverty, whatever that group is, I said, well, that figures. I'm already called that, and, you know, nothing new. So God has, we've got to get tougher skin and not be afraid how much manure is flying, because that's what will save our constitutional republic.